Number 1, you talk to yourself, out loud, full sentences. Not muttering, not whispering, actually talking. To yourself. About your problems, your decisions, your grocery list, the argument you're going to have with someone who doesn't even know you're planning it. And everyone around you thinks you've lost it. But here's what's actually happening. When you say something out loud, your brain processes it completely differently than when you just think it. The thought goes from vague and floating to structured and real. It's the difference between an idea living in your head as a fog and an idea becoming a sentence you can actually examine. Einstein did this, constantly. He would walk through his ideas out loud, step by step, until something clicked, and it wasn't a nervous habit, it was how he worked. Psychologists have a name for it, externalized metacognition, which is a very complicated way of saying your brain is thinking about its own thinking and using your voice as the tool to do it. Studies have shown that saying things out loud improves memory retention, sharpens focus, and helps untangle complex decisions faster than silent reasoning alone. Athletes call it self-talk. Therapists call it processing. You call it embarrassing when someone walks in. But what it actually is your mind demanding more than silence can give it. Some thoughts are too big, too tangled, too important to stay inside your head. They need air. They need to be heard, even if the only audience is you. Number 2, you feel genuinely bad for objects. Not pretend bad, actually bad. You apologize to a table you bumped into last week. You have a name for your car, and using that name feels completely normal. You felt genuine guilt about throwing away an old mug like it trusted you, and you let it down. This sounds ridiculous until you realize what it actually means. The psychological term is anthropomorphism, attributing human qualities to non-human things, and research consistently links it to higher creativity, stronger empathy, and more sophisticated social intelligence. It means your brain is constantly running an emotional simulation of the world around you, constantly asking, what would this feel like if it could feel? That's not a small thing, that's an incredibly complex cognitive process. Pixar turned it into billions of dollars. Philosophers have built entire careers on it, but for you, it's just Tuesday. The reason it's connected to intelligence is this. The same mental machinery that lets you project emotion onto a coffee mug is the same machinery that lets you understand how other people are feeling before they tell you. You're not just empathetic toward people. You're empathetic toward the entire world. Everything is alive to you. Everything has weight. Yeah, it means you occasionally feel bad for your refrigerator. But it also means you're emotionally reading rooms, relationships, and situations at a level that most people simply can't. Number 3, you always feel slightly outside of things. Not depressed, not antisocial, just watching. You're at the party, but you're also observing the party. You're in the conversation, but you're also noticing how the conversation works. You understand the joke, but there's a half-second delay because you're aware it's a joke, which somehow makes it slightly less funny and slightly more interesting at the same time. This is called cultural frame switching, and it's extremely common in people with high abstract intelligence. Here's why it happens. Most people operate inside the social system. They follow its rules, share its assumptions, laugh at the right moments because it all makes intuitive sense to them. But some people are wired to see the system itself, the rules, the structures, the invisible scripts that everyone else is following without realizing they're following anything. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You're never fully inside it again. That distance feels like loneliness sometimes. Like you're always slightly out of sync, always missing the frequency everyone else is tuned to. But that same distance is why you're the one who spots the problem everyone else missed. The contradiction no one else questioned. The pattern hiding inside the noise. The most original thinking in history, in science, in art, in philosophy, almost never came from the person who was most comfortable in the room. It came from the person standing slightly outside it, wondering why the room was built this way in the first place. Number 4, ideas make you feel things deeply. Not just intellectually interested, actually emotionally affected. Someone says something logically inconsistent, and your chest tightens. You read about an injustice and you can't sleep because your brain keeps returning to it. Someone misuses a word and your reaction is disproportionate in a way you can't fully explain, but you can't help. Most people treat ideas as information. You treat them as something closer to relationships. Here's the science behind it. High-intelligence individuals tend to develop what psychologists call moral intensity, a deep emotional investment in abstract principles like fairness, truth, logic, and consistency. These concepts aren't just intellectually important to you. They're connected to your identity. When something violates them, it doesn't feel like a wrong answer on a test. It feels like a betrayal. That's why you can't just let things go in arguments. That's why a single logical contradiction in a conversation can bother you for days. Your brain isn't being dramatic. It's registering a genuine conflict with something it cares about. And yes, it can make you exhausting at dinner parties, but it's also the same mechanism that drives every meaningful intellectual contribution to human civilization. The people who changed how we understand the world didn't just think their way there. They felt their way there. They cared so much about getting it right that wrong felt physically intolerable. Numbed 5, you would rather text than call. It's not anxiety, it's not avoidance. Well, it might be a little bit of avoidance, but mostly it's something else. When you speak in real time, your thoughts have to come out in real time. No editing, no restructuring, no deleting the first draft and writing a better one. The words leave your mouth before your brain has fully finished building the thought, and that gap bothers you in a way it doesn't bother other people. When you write, that gap disappears. You can think, then write, then revise, then send. The final message actually reflects what you meant, not what you could produce under pressure. Smart people disproportionately prefer written communication because their thoughts are dense, multi-layered, full of qualifications and connections that verbal conversation doesn't have the bandwidth to carry. Writing gives those thoughts room to breathe. A phone call compresses them into something simpler than they really are. There's also a timing element, asynchronous communication, where you respond when you're ready, not when the other person's breathing is filling the silence. Gives you control over the quality of your thinking, and for a mind that holds itself to high standards, that control isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Spoken words are improv, written words are architecture, and you've always been better at building than performing. Number 6, watching someone cheat, the system ruins your entire day. Not just mildly annoying, ruins it. You see someone cut the queue, exploit a loophole, get away with something they shouldn't, and something in you goes completely rigid. It doesn't even have to affect you personally. The unfairness itself is what gets you, the violation of how things should work. This response is called moral sensitivity, and it's significantly more pronounced in people with complex ethical reasoning. Here's the mechanism. Most people have basic rules they follow. Don't steal, don't lie, be kind. But highly intelligent people tend to build entire frameworks, systems of principles that connect to each other, that have internal logic, that extend from specific rules to universal ones. When someone violates that framework, it's not just rude, it's a structural failure, and your brain treats it accordingly. The result is that you feel injustice where others barely notice it. You spiral over ethical inconsistencies that most people shrug off. You become the person in your friend group who is constitutionally incapable of letting things go when something's genuinely wrong. Which is exhausting, but it's also the exact mechanism behind almost every social reform in history. The person who couldn't let it go, who felt the wrongness not as an abstract fact but as a personal wound. That person across centuries is the reason anything ever changed. Number 7, you pick up on things nobody said. A pause that lasted a second too long, an answer that was technically correct but felt hollow, a laugh that matched the sound of a laugh but missed the energy of one. You noticed all of it, you cataloged it, and later it turned out you were right. This isn't oversensitivity. This is advanced pattern recognition applied to human behavior. The brain processes emotional signals on 2 tracks simultaneously. There's the conscious track, the words being spoken, the meaning being stated. And then there's the subconscious track, The micro expressions, the tiny vocal shifts, the body language that people don't even know they're producing. Most people pick up fragments from that second track. You receive the full transmission. And because your brain is constantly cross-referencing what people say against what they're communicating non-verbally, you end up knowing things about a situation before it becomes obvious to anyone else. The cost is that this system never powers down. You're reading every room, every conversation, every interaction at full processing capacity all the time, which means you hit emotional overload faster than people who are only paying surface-level attention. The same sensitivity that makes you the first to notice something's wrong is the same sensitivity that makes loud environments, tense atmospheres, and fake social situations genuinely draining. It's a blessing wrapped in a headache, but it also means you are nearly impossible to lie to. Number 8, you go completely silent for long stretches. Not sulking, not checked out, actually thinking. You disappear into your own head for hours. Messages go unanswered. You stare at nothing, which looks like nothing but is actually the opposite of nothing. Inside, something is being built. A framework, an argument, a solution to a problem you've been carrying around for days without consciously working on it. This phase has a name in cognitive science: incubation. It's the stage where your brain is processing information below the level of conscious awareness, making connections between things you know, testing combinations, discarding dead ends. And it's not optional for certain kinds of minds. It's required. The ideas that emerge from long silences tend to be structurally different from ideas that come out of active brainstorming. They're more complete, more unexpected, more genuinely original, because they were assembled somewhere below the noise without the interference of trying to have the idea. The shower thought, the sudden clarity on a walk, the answer arriving fully formed at 2 in the morning. That's not random. That's your brain delivering finished work from a factory you didn't know was running. Quiet people are not empty people. They're often the ones doing the heaviest lifting, just in a place no one else can see. Number 9. You get obsessed with things nobody else cares about. Not interested, not curious, obsessed. Last month it was the economic history of the Silk Road. This month it's the acoustics of medieval cathedrals. At some point it was competitive moss cultivation, and you have no regrets. You don't skim articles on these topics. You inhale entire subcategories of human knowledge about them and emerge weeks later, blinking, full of information no one around you knows what to do with. This is not a quirk. This is what high-level curiosity actually looks like in practice. The brain is a depth-seeking organ. For most people, knowing the surface of something is enough. They get the gist, move on. But certain minds have a compulsion to go further, to understand not just what, but why and how, and what happens at the edges where most people stop looking. It's the difference between visiting a city and wanting to understand why it was built where it was, in the shape it is, by the people who built it. Darwin spent 8 years studying barnacles before he published anything about evolution. Marie Curie's obsession with radioactive materials was so consuming it literally killed her. The pattern is consistent across centuries of original thinkers. They couldn't do shallow. When something caught their attention, it caught all of it. Your obsessions are not distractions. They are your brain doing exactly what it was built to do, following a thread all the way to the end, regardless of whether anyone else can see the point. Number 10. You invented your own system for everything. Your notes don't look like anyone else's notes. Your calendar would need a legend to decode. Your color-coding system is internally consistent and externally incomprehensible, and you wouldn't trade it for any productivity app ever made. This is not disorganization. This is the opposite of disorganization. What you've built is a custom cognitive infrastructure, a set of tools shaped precisely around how your specific brain processes and stores information. And the reason you had to build it yourself is that the generic systems were built for the average mind. Your mind is not average. It has specific needs, specific patterns, specific ways of connecting information that off-the-shelf solutions simply don't accommodate. The intelligence here is structural. You didn't just absorb the world, you looked at the world, found it insufficient, and redesigned the parts of it you interact with most. That's not a minor thing. Most people adapt themselves to their environment. You adapted your environment to you. Nikola Tesla ran entire engineering simulations inside his head before building anything physical. Richard Feynman invented his own notation system because the existing one didn't capture what he was trying to say. The impulse to build private systems is the impulse behind almost every significant intellectual contribution. The world as given is not good enough, so let's make a better version. Your conspiracy board calendar isn't a mess. It's a map, and you're the only one who knows how to read it because you're the only one who needed to go where it leads.